That's all right.
So
We can just start over.
Yeah, so you're telling me you just finished a 3/4 set, and tell me about that set that you guys
Yeah. So it was for my nephew, right? And generally we like to try to do 3/4 set, and we want to set up a system where we can rent them out, just so that kids can play them for a while, and then when they grow out of them, they can get full sets.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah, cool story about the 3/4 model that we use. We had a friend who said he had a set of 3/4 bagpipes, and he wanted us to sort of fix them up so that his grandkid could use them, right? So he sends them over, and they're in pretty rough shape, and they're very old. And so we found the markings on them, and according to the markings, they're late 1880s McDougalls.
Whoa.
And so we told him that his grandkid could not play them.
Those belong in a museum.
Yeah, like I felt like Indiana Jones when I was looking at them. I just kept saying, these belong in a museum.
Yeah.
And they were really cool, like a lot of original ivory on them and stuff. And so we got all the measurements off of those, and that's the 3/4 model that we use.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
They have a pretty cool sound too. Like they're already a little bit quieter because they're 3/4. But McDougalls tend to be just like really subtle drone sounds, really smooth, and yeah, that's pretty cool. I just tested those this week, and it was fun to play.
Do you, for the 3/4 set, do you also make the chanter, or do you outsource that?
No, you can use regular chanter on them.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah, I figured you could. I'm just imagining do you make a smaller size one that?
No, there are a few chanters out there that are a little bit better for kids, but there's not really like a kid's full size chanter.
Yeah, I can't.
That I know of.
Especially
maybe
if you're looking for a pitch match for them to be able to play along with a juvenile band.
Yeah,
or something.
yeah. But there are models that are better for kids.
Yeah.
You know, like the big hold McCallums usually won't be good for a kid.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool, man. I've been just drooling over your Instagram account as always. Some lovely stuff. What was that?
Yeah.
There was a set you did. I'm scrolling through right now trying to find it that had the mounts at the top. The what do you call it? Is it the projection mounts? Is that the part that cups out? Is that what you call it?
The bell at the very top of the drone?
That's right. Yeah, the bell.
Yeah.
You did a set a while ago that they're just like perfect spheres.
Yeah, they're like round balls. Yeah, that was a fun set. And actually the mounts and the bushings are the bits that go on the top of the drone, right? That sort of plug the bell. They're out of elk antler too. And then he wanted the stainless to look like fatigued and old, so like I like treated with my stainless steel so that it looked like extra old.
Yeah.
And yeah, he wanted this really sort of round, interesting sort of profile, and yeah, it was a really fun set to make.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so much cool stuff. If anybody's listening who hasn't listened to the previous interview with Ross, I'll put a link to it in the show notes so you can hear him talk about some of these pipes that he makes, and get on Instagram and Facebook and follow these guys because they're putting out the sets are all unique. It's not like Moral Bagpipes has one profile. Like every set is so unique, not just in materials and colors, but also in whether or not there's beading, and like you're saying, the bells at the top are different shapes, and the pairing between different kinds of metals and antlers and different woods and stuff. It's so cool.
Yeah. I stamp all my sets with a number, and I'm almost to 75 Highland bagpipe sets made.
Wow.
And yeah, each one of them is different.
Super cool, man. Well, that stuff is cool. We'll put that on the back burner for a sec, though, and I will try to not get distracted by asking you about, where you get Zeracoat wood or whatever that stuff is and stuff like that. I want to know about pipe majoring today. Probably the release of this. So right now, as we're talking, we're kind of going into the first, air quotes, like normal competition season in a few years.
Yeah.
So it feels feels hot on pipe majors, trying to whip everybody into shape, I'm sure. But this will probably come out toward the end of the competition season, so maybe there will be some, some reassignments. There might be some new pipe majors in positions, retiring old pipe majors, that kind of stuff. And even if not, people just thinking about next season. I would just, I guess we should do some context. Tell me about your current position with the band and stuff, and what led up to that.
I'm the pipe major for the Grade 2 Wasatch and District Pipe Band. And Wasatch and District formed back in 2004, and we've been steadily improving. I took over as pipe major in 2010-ish, and then I had a couple years break in there too. So I've been a pipe major for around 10 years, I would say. Of course, obviously, professionally, you make sets and you teach. Had you previously done other leadership positions in bands? Just not a ton, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit. When I really started to improve and sort of understand how a band should sound a little bit, by listening and experience, I started to try to do more within the band that my dad was pipe major of. That my dad was pipe major before me.
Mm-hmm.
And so, especially tuning, I got pretty proficient at tuning, and so I took over those duties before I became pipe major. And then, Justin Howland and we went and played with Triumph Street for 2 years, 2008 and 2009. And that gave us a ton of experience on, how to run a really great band.
When you went into that experience, were you thinking already, I'm going to pay attention to how they do stuff? Or was it more kind of already in the mix of it, you were like, oh man, I should take notes?
No. I went in thinking about that specifically. I knew that I couldn't play with them forever. It's being an out-of-town player, it's a financial drain.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not feasible, super long-term, but at least it wasn't for me.
Could be with a sponsorship. If any eccentric millionaires are listening.
Yeah. Anyways, so I knew that I would come back eventually, and I knew that I would want to really push piping in Utah specifically. Mm-hmm. So I went in with the mindset that I was going to learn as much as I could.
Yeah.
About how to run a good band.
Yeah. So you brought that back with you. Tell me, man, how do you run a good band? Have you seen any things that pipe majors should not do? Maybe we set this up here's me. I don't have a lot of experience. Let's say hypothetically, I'm about to become the pipe major of a grade 4 band. A grade 5, grade 4 band. What should I know? What words of wisdom would you distill upon me?
I think the first thing to do is sort of set some goals, short term and long term, and do that especially with the mindset of what could be feasible. Take stock of what you have, your assets, your players, their level of playing and stuff like that, and then figure out where you want to go and set some goals for yourself.
Yeah.
And then the next thing I would do is figure out exactly what your duties are going to be. And obviously there's going to be some flexibility for people. In my opinion, a pipe major should be basically the musical director, the person in charge of making the band sound good and play good, right?
Yeah.
With that being said, make sure that you involve other people in your organization so you can delegate out a lot of the other tasks. Because if you're doing uniforms and you're doing booking gigs and you're doing everything involved in leading a band, you don't really have as much time to focus on, the musical aspect.
Yeah, if the pipe major is up all night before a competition buying snacks at Costco so that the band will be okay, right? And they don't show up ready to compete, right? Ready to lead.
Yeah, it's really true.
When you say the sort of like the musical director, in the Wasatch and District organization, you do have a lot of people, boards and stuff like that. Do you as pipe major sit on the music board?
Yeah, on the music committee. Yeah, within the organization, we have a music committee, and all pipe majors and pipe sergeants and drum sergeants are on that committee.
Which,
and then
I guess, how many does that mean? How many bands do you guys currently have?
3.
Yeah.
So that's 9, and then we have a couple more people on that board who are sort of, helping out with things.
I don't mean to be tedious with you, Ross, but like for so many of us, this will be like either foreign or a distant dream. What does that committee look like? Like, are you meeting intensely before a season or after a season or all year round? When you do, like, are you bouncing ideas off of each other? Are you getting out sheet music at the meetings? Like, what does that committee do?
It mostly, we meet around once a month, a little more heavy in the off season than when we're during the season, just because we're busier. But we make sure everyone, all the leadership has, what they need for their bands. We staff gigs. So like, our band manager will send info about our gigs and be like, hey, we need to staff this gig. Which band's doing it? Who's going to do it? Get the personnel there.
Does that staffing drill down to like the individual players, like saying, here is the list of humans that we're going to have there?
Mostly we, divide it up between bands, Yeah. So like if the grade 2's assigned a gig, then I'm responsible to make sure I have enough pipers at the gig. So it does those kinds of things. Chooses music for the gigs, stuff like that. And then it's a support role for the pipe majors and drum sergeants and stuff like that as well.
Yeah. Is that kind of the laboratory for picking competition sets? Is that where a lot of the discussions happen?
Usually not. Usually sort of the individual leadership will head that off separately. That would be a little bit too much for everyone to be involved in.
Yeah. But do you feel like as the pipe major of the grade 2 band in that setting, sitting on that committee, do you end up playing something of a mentoring role to the other groups at all?
A little bit, but not really. I've tried to really make sure that each group is as self-sufficient as possible. That has always been important to me. And that's for a couple reasons. I don't want like the other graded bands to just feel like they have another leader on top of their pipe major. Does that make sense?
That totally makes sense, yeah.
That can be confusing, and it's just not very conducive to the growth of the band or the leadership within that band,
Yeah. Yeah, that's
so like, yeah, mostly I just, keep my hands out of that just to not get in their way and stuff. And that really helps with their development for the most part.
Yeah. Well, and that's a good enough reason, but I could imagine that maybe there's also the element of not you've already got enough to do. If everybody stays in their lane and does their thing, then everybody gets stuff done and doesn't get burnt out trying to spread themselves across too much.
Exactly. Yeah. I like to put limits on what I'm going to do, because that way I'm always excited about, what I'm doing rather than feeling bogged down.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Do you feel like you can point back right now to any goals, short-term and or long-term, that you set when you became pipe major of the grade 2, that you've either kind of hit at this point or that you're marching towards still?
Well, when I became pipe major, we were still grade 3, and my goal was to get into grade 2. That was the biggest. Yeah, that was the biggest goal, and it was sort of long-termish, like I wanted to get it done within, 5 or 6 years. And
you did mention having them be realistic. It's not like you came in and said, we're going to be grade 2 next year, guys.
Yeah. You should definitely be realistic with your goals. And then we just kept working hard at that, and it eventually worked out.
What does working hard at that look like if a band wants to do better in the grade where they are and eventually move to another competitive grade? Do you feel like there's an order of priorities? Like, don't worry about your finger work so much until you can tune your pipes. You know, like, is there an order that you would build up? Like using the hypothetical that I'm the new pipe major of a grade 5 or a grade 4 band.
Yeah.
What would I focus on first?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I think that the biggest thing, we worked on in order to sort of level up was just playing more musical and more together, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So what we did to accomplish that is we sort of slowed down a lot of our music for a while. Opened it up, so that we could be really precise in how we were playing. And that got us much better at playing like things like strathspeys and 2/4 marches, things that are highly, types of music that are highly expressive. So we focused heavily on that first. And then sort of along with that, was tone, like getting a better sound, right? And so in order to help with that, I try to be very instructive on how to take care of a bagpipe, because I think that's one of the biggest factors. So like if I was ever doing anything to a bagpipe that I wanted people to know about, I would explain what I was doing while I was doing it.
You weren't keeping it secret.
Yeah, I wasn't just doing it. Yeah. I always try to do that.
Yeah.
Things like, it even went down to things like, hey, Ross, can you tie on a new bag for me? I'd be like, sure, but you have to be there and watch me at least, you know, so that, maybe you could do this in the future. Or like when I'm adjusting drones, it could be that small. Like your drone is doing this because of this reason, so now I'm doing this for this reason, and it should be better, right?
Yeah, that level. That must take some conscious effort sometimes, I would imagine, because like if you're in a circle, like you just want to hurry up and fix it so you can play it all together.
Yeah. I mean, there's exceptions. If it's like contest day,
of course,
and I got half an hour till we need to be on,
you just gotta go.
I'm just going. Yeah, I'm not explaining things in that moment. But otherwise, I try to do that as much as possible.
So maintenance is important for tone, but how matched are you in terms of equipment in your grade 2 band? Like surely you have matched chanters, but I've seen you play, and I'm sure that I'm seeing different sets of drones. I mean, some of them are stuff that you've made, and some of them are McCallum's, and some of them are Atherton's.
Yeah, that ends up not being as important as just having matching chanters and reeds, chanter reeds. So
do the drone reeds not match either?
No. Actually, I feel like it provides a little bit more depth in your drone sound if they don't all match. It can start to sound really sterile if everything is exactly the same.
Yeah, that's an interesting point.
Yeah. So, our chanters and our chanter reeds match. And then as, we were getting going, I was very strict about people in grade 4 and 3 not doing anything to their chanters.
As far as like not even tape moving around?
Yep. Don't do anything, right?
Yeah.
That gave me a lot more control over the chanters, and I could dial in the tone. As long as they were maintaining their bagpipe and playing it, then I could, control the tape and the reed as much as possible, especially in grade 4 and 3. Nowadays, I'm encouraging players to do a little bit more, just because they've been with me for a long time now, and I've been doing those little bits of instruction here and there, so people are starting to catch on what to do a little bit, and I'm starting to trust them to keep their bagpipe, and also their ability to hear a good bagpipe compared to a bad one. is far better now. So
if
we're sort of graduating.
They're graduating. No, that makes sense. It's like this training the next generation in a lot of ways too, right?
Yeah.
So if I went to a Wasatch District grade 2 practice, as everybody's getting their instruments out, would I not see people putting their chanter reeds into their mouths to get the reeds wet, pinching them, that kind of stuff?
No. I would hope not. I don't mind.
If I did, I should report it to you, right?
Report it immediately. Yeah. So, a little bit of moisture on a reed is not necessarily a bad thing, but we have tone protectors now, which are chanter caps that help keep a little bit of humidity on our reeds.
Yeah.
Which are really nice. So we don't need to do that too much anymore. But people shouldn't be messing too much with their reed. If they need something done, like it's like if I've given them a new reed recently and it's like, hey, I need a little bit of a scrape here, like it's a little hard, they'll come to me, and so I make sure that I'm really accommodating in that way.
Yeah. So you're doing that, but also still explaining to them, it's hard or it's squeaking, so I'm going to take this part off. I'm going to take it off the edge, off the middle, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So one thing I've always wondered about, and I've never known, is the as far as like keeping reeds sort of like matching. You can hand out reeds all from the same maker, but like say we're, I don't know, 6-8 weeks away from the first competition. Is there a point where you would hand out brand new reeds to everybody on the same day, so they're all starting from the same point? And even from there, then is there a level of control over how much a person plays on their own time? Because if you have one person who's playing 4 hours a day and another person who only plays at practice, those reeds are going to get to different spots at different times,
Yeah, and that's actually part of the reason I would never give out everyone a new reed at the same time. It doesn't really give you any advantage, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Plus, it's sort of a really big pain in the butt for at least 2 or 3 weeks.
Yes, better to spread that out, kind of one person at a time.
Yeah. Spread it out a little bit. It's a little bit less work over time.
So I guess, are you more kind of trusting people to know that their reed's in a good spot for the upcoming competition, and if it isn't, they get it replaced?
Yeah, and I'll remind people, and I monitor that, like, just sort of mentally. I keep track of whose reed is going,
Yeah.
Because I tune everyone, almost weekly, so, like, I can tell.
Yeah.
Like, oh, such and such player is going to need a reed coming up. I'll start prepping it for him.
I'm imagining like this like mental clipboard in your brain, just like tracking the progress of every single chanter reed in the whole band.
Yeah, a little bit. It sort of goes like that. Yeah, I even like when I'm prepping a reed and making some of the first adjustments to it and blowing on it to get that tone, like I will even I'll even choose a reed for specific players. Like, I know this reed is going to them because they like a slightly harder reed or a slightly easier reed or, things like that.
So you don't just know bagpipes, you know your players.
Yeah, no, I think that's super important for a pipe major is to know your players really well, So, like, I even know, like, some of my players will always, as soon as they get in a competition circle, blow 10% more,
so everything goes sharp.
It goes a little bit. So I'll flatten them, 10 minutes before the contest.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's amazing, man. So, sorry to keep hitting on tone just a little bit more. So equipment is important and equipment maintenance is important.
Yes.
Do you guys have, so then using the equipment, do you guys have those? I'm blanking on what they're called. The water meter manometers, the water meters for pressure to see how steady you are and what level of pressure you're blowing at.
I've never really used one of those. No.
I never have either, but I do remember when I was in the high school band that I played with in high school, they had basically a giant like 1970s era electronic tuner basically that would it was like a strobe tuner, so any variation in whatever tone you were playing, you'd see it really clearly.
Yeah.
And they would just post us, our director Carrie, she would post us up in front of that for like 30-40 minutes at a time and just be like, play a low A and keep it steady.
Yeah.
Do you do stuff like that? Is stuff like that helpful?
It's not something I've done. I think that can be like personally enlightening. But I feel like it would be more like a demonstration of, hey, look at your blowing. It's all over the place, right? you need to work on that. And I don't know that it would be in the process of working on that. It would be super helpful. What I prefer is just to listen to the sound, because that's what you'll actually have when
Yeah.
you're playing in a circle.
Oh, sure. So you don't want to create a crutch that you can't take with you into the circle.
Exactly,
Yeah, that makes sense.
exactly. Yeah. If you eventually should get to the point where you're listening and trying to match blowing, or noticing that you're not blowing steady and working on that, just according to the sound, than relying on some kind of meter.
Yeah.
In the long run, it's better.
So this idea of tone in a band it feels a little bit elusive to me. I hear Andrew Douglas talk about it, and the Chanterant guys talk about it. I feel like I've heard Joe Brady talk about how to kind of get tone, but I still don't entirely understand. Like, once you've got the equipment all set up, then what happens with musicianship? You know, like, what is each individual doing to find and maintain tone as a group? You know.
Yeah, that's an interesting question.
Is that the question?
That is the question. Actually, so like, as far as the progression of our grade 2 band, right now, this year, it's like one of my goals to focus a little bit on blowing and that sort of next level of sound, right? I'm pretty good at tuning the band, but I can be the greatest tuner in the world, and if everyone's blowing weird out in the competition circle, it won't matter
Yeah.
all that much. So right now we're working on that, and I think that the biggest element of that is just listening, right? And so, yeah, like during rehearsals, I'll try to point out things like that, to players. Like, hey, I want you, look, your high A is almost in. It's just barely out. I want you to listen. See if you can adjust the blowing so that you can get that a little bit tighter, right?
Yeah.
Or, big note for blowing is usually D,
Yeah.
So, like, use that note a lot. Like, our Ds are out. Everyone find them. Like, like...
Everybody find your missing Ds. Get
Yeah.
them together. That's when you say listening. Maybe this is an unfair question, because maybe it's a little bit of everything. But I remember back in the marching band days when I was playing trumpet, our band director saying you've got one ear for your instrument and one ear for the instruments around you, and you need to make it all work. I feel like, though I've been playing in competitive bands for a long time, I've never had a second ear to spare for my neighbor. And maybe that's a problem with me, because I feel like if I'm going to focus on anything, I'm trying to listen really close to my own chanter and my own drones to make sure I'm not the one screwing stuff up. Is that where my focus as a player ought to be, or do I need to be listening to the people on either side of me to try to match their tone?
Yeah, actually, like, especially as just like a playing member, like for example in Triumph Street, I didn't listen to me at all. I listened more to other people. Well, I shouldn't say at all, but like I would devote more attention to players around me than to my own playing, because my own playing should be fairly automatic. And the point of playing in a band is pipe band especially, is that you should blend completely away, right?
Yeah.
You're trying to just become part of a whole sound, rather than I think in marching band it's different because there's so many different parts, and there's not that element of sort of just blending in and disappearing into the greater sound.
Yeah. Oh, that's an interesting point. I guess I can imagine, so then in personal practice, you're, of course, listening closely and you're trying to figure out how much pressure does it take, to be just right there in the spot. And so then when you're in the circle, you can do that based on maybe muscle memory and stuff like that. And you can devote your attention, as you say, to the players around you.
Yeah, definitely.
Hello, friends. Just the standard quick notes here, real quick. Feel free to review the show on your podcast listening platform of choice, maybe especially iTunes right now if you want to help rescue a few of our stars. A recent negative review rather threw off the old average over there, considering how few reviews there are. Follow the show on Facebook. Just search Droning On Podcast, or on Instagram at droning.on.podcast. You can email the show at TheDroningOnPodcast@gmail.com. By the way, including the at the beginning is important. droningonpodcast@gmail.com was already taken, sorry, and I haven't yet sprung for a professional email like contact@droningonpodcast or something like that, right? So thedroningonpodcast@gmail.com. And I promise I'll never be upset with anyone for patronizing the show over at patreon.com/droningonpodcast. Direct links to all of these can be found in the show notes, as well as links to all the stuff mentioned in this episode, links to the Moral Bagpipes website, their Facebook account, and their Instagram account, which is well worth following for just the beautiful stuff they're making over there. Also, at the time of releasing this episode, I am in the middle of attempting to get some traction under another venture, bagpipeswag.com. I suppose I could even do one of those very professional podcasty things right now and say, this episode brought to you by bagpipeswag.com. Play it loud, wear it proud. I am definitely still workshopping that tagline, the play it loud, wear it proud. Let me know what you think. The idea here is to have a kind of farmer's market model, but on the internet, where any bagpipe-related artist, instructor, maker, pipe band, etc., right, rather than farmers, can set up a what you might call a stand, in the farmer's market, which is bagpipeswag.com. And so then their stand, that's a place where they could sell merch without having to worry about overhead costs, inventory, shipping and delivery, all that kind of stuff. That's all kind of taken care of by the farmer's market, bagpipeswag.com, right? Kind of a co-op kind of thing, I guess. So if you're a bagpipe artist and you want to sell your merch on there, or if you're in a pipe band and you want to see your pipe band's merch on there, etc., just let me know. The easiest way is to go over to bagpipeswag.com and click the contact page. Also, I do have my own little stand, as it were. I'm doing air quotes there, my little stand in the farmer's market. Or in the metaphorical farmer's merch market. This is getting too messy, isn't it? Anyway, I've got my own page over there. It's just called In-House Designs, and I'm just constantly adding pipe and drum inspired designs to that. It's a great way to support me if you ever see anything that you like over there. And patrons of the Droning On podcast do get discounts on the site. So, basically what I'm saying is, if you give me money and then want to give me even more money, I will make it as easy for you to do that as possible. Well, enough of this. That's that. Okay. Perfect timing for my sweet children to come into the office. So, back to the conversation. Now you said so we're starting. We're working on tuning and tone in my hypothetical pipe band.
Yep.
You mentioned that you guys slowed everything down. Do you use a lot of metronomes?
No, not necessarily. We just sort of, backed off on tempos till we could play the expression right. Mm. And it was a minor back off. It wasn't like completely, distracting levels,
Yeah.
But just backing off that little bit just allowed us to be more precise. And then I could point out those sort of musical things, like, hey, we're not holding this dot. We're not, starting this movement together, things like that. And just that little bit of tempo off the top just makes those things a little bit more apparent. Because again, just like in tone for music, my primary goal is to get the players to identify the issues themselves. Mm-hmm. And because if they can't, they're not going to fix them if they don't even realize they're happening or if it's them,
Yeah. So you're helping them train their own awareness.
Yeah, exactly. That's probably the best way to put it. So yeah, just backing things off so that we could get just a lot more musically tight and on the same page stylistically. So and then then slowly we build up once I felt that those kind of things locked in.
Yeah. So as a pipe major, when you're giving feedback like that, in a rehearsal, I'd imagine you open up with tuning. Everybody's tuned. Now we get together. We're going to play. Here's what we're going to do. Play through it. What have you found a good formula for how to give and when to give feedback? Like do you say we're going to do the next 8 bars, and if the first 2 bars sound terrible, do you stop them and say no, 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 or do you play it out and say now who noticed what? You know, maybe it's a mix of strategies, but how do you usually handle giving your band feedback in a rehearsal?
Yeah, it definitely depends. We just recently last weekend played in Grand Junction for judges.
Mm-hmm.
And about for the month and a half before that, we were mostly just getting through music because I wanted to get repetitions on all of our sets so that we could just feel comfortable with them as sets, you know?
Yeah.
And get that muscle memory in. So I wasn't stopping a lot. If I was hearing things, I was pushing through them a little bit, bringing them up still afterwards. Like, hey, notice that happened. But my priority wasn't to clean that. It was to get runs, right?
Yeah.
And then this past week, the week after, listening to our sets and, evaluating what happened on them, we spent a lot more time just going over, parts or even phrases or even movements, cleaning, doing a little bit more cleaning.
Do you usually record your sets at competitions so that then you don't just have judges' sheets after? You can also listen to how it went?
Always, yeah. Yeah, we have people who have good equipment too that we can get fairly good recordings off of, and it's important. I regularly record rehearsals as well, just because when you're playing and you're doing all that, you don't notice everything. It's nice to have a way to just go back and really evaluate what happened.
Yeah, is that audio only, or do you capture video as well?
Video is not as important.
Yeah.
I don't care too much about it. It's nice on the competitions, but for rehearsals, it's just audio.
So then for the rehearsals, what's the distribution like afterward? Is this something that you as the pipe major does? Like afterward, you download the file and send it out and say, hey, everybody, I want you to listen to this part and this part and this part. Or do you hand that to the band manager? Or how does that go?
Yeah, quite often I'll have them send it out. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes it's just for me. But sometimes I want people to hear certain things, and so then I
kind
will
of
send
direct
them
their
out.
attention to it.
Yeah.
I see. So, so you mentioned that sometimes you want to get reps in.
Yep.
Do you like to, as a pipe major? I'm assuming this is a pipe major thing in your band, that the pipe major would decide what the agenda is for each practice. Is that
well, we sort of work together with the drum sergeant to make sure that
I keep forgetting the drum sergeant. How
there is a drum corps.
Correct. Yeah, that's right. There are drums there, aren't there?
So that during sectionals we're working on things that we want to work on together, and then we come together and work on them. So there's a bit of coordination for that, but mostly I'm just figuring out what we want to work on, stuff like that.
So do you find that you like to have a night to focus on tone and tuning and a night to focus on finger work, or is it just depending on what's needed most? It might be a mix of different concepts and ideas.
Yeah, sometimes it's just what's needed.
Yeah.
Like last week we spent a little more time tuning just because we got back from a contest. Our pipes were out in the sun.
Yeah.
They needed to be reset a little bit,
Yeah, Grand Junction elevation change too, right?
Actually, the elevation change wasn't too bad, but that is huge, especially for us because we compete mostly at sea level.
But you practice what are we like 5,000 feet above sea level or something here?
45 about, yeah.
45.
And elevation makes so huge of a difference on a bagpipe.
Yeah.
So, yeah, usually before and after a contest, especially if we're traveling to sea level.
Yeah.
I spend an extra rehearsal just either prepping for the change to sea level or readjusting back to elevation. Yeah.
And you've done it enough times at this point. You've got an idea what's going to happen to the instruments.
Yeah. I know exactly what's going to happen. We'll when we arrive at sea level, I tell everyone to remove tape from their high Gs because I just know that they're going to have to anyways,
Well,
so
that's
just
because
do it.
to play up here, there is no high G. It's always
I can get one. I can get one, but when we go to the coast, it's just so nice to free up the high G.
You can
and
actually
it's
hear it.
Yeah.
I love that. multiple students and also just new players in the pipe band, that it's like after they've been playing for long enough, there's going to come the day when they're going to ask that question, like, what can I do to make it so I can hear my high G? So it's like, well, you got a few options. you,
Yeah.
you carve it out, or just go somewhere else geographically to play, or just let it be way out of tune. So then we're kind of like building these blocks for like what to focus on as a pipe major. So the pipe major is thinking about what to do in rehearsal, thinking about music. We don't want to have the pipe major having to worry about, sort of like, what would be the word? I don't want to make any job seem like it's less important, of course, right? But
Well, like managerial stuff that can be delegated should be, right?
Yeah, things that can be, should be. Of course, some groups are so small that
Yeah.
you do kind of end up with the same three people wearing a lot of hats. But.
Yeah, and like that could be okay for certain groups. Every group's going to be a little bit different, but yeah. Mm-hmm. If you do have someone that's just really dedicated to the musical aspect, they'll be much more successful if they don't have to wear other hats.
Now, Ross, a lot of pipe majors are not as experienced as you are. So, when we talk about, even for me, thinking about myself, if I were hypothetically becoming a pipe major, we're talking about tone and about slowing things down and about equipment maintenance and stuff like that. I wouldn't know without help what these things mean and how to do them, So do you have any ideas or suggestions for what, a new pipe major for a grade 4 band could do to educate themselves in order to then be able to turn around and help their band out?
Sure, yeah, there's a couple ways. One is to actually go make an effort to play with, a higher level band, for a season or two. That's something that worked really well for me. You could also get private lessons, and I'm sure I would as an instructor if someone's like, hey, I want to specifically take lessons with the mind of I want to be a better pipe major, I would accommodate that, and I could come up with a curriculum to help them with that.
I'd never thought of that before. I always think of private lessons as this is for you and your own playing. But of course, a lot of instructors will have experience as pipe majors and could be helpful in that way.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So you could seek out an instructor who might help you with that. Then just personally, just listening to a lot of good bands is super useful. If you sort of understand the different standards, and don't just listen to grade 1 bands either, right? Listen to really good bands that are in your grade. Listen to really good bands and mediocre bands in the grade that you're shooting for.
Yeah.
Listen a lot and sort of develop your ear as much as possible, I think is one of the best things you can do as a pipe major.
I remember a few years ago when the Big Rab show started going out to competitions, and they were putting out recordings of everything.
Yeah.
Not just the grade 1, and how much fun that was to hear.
Yeah.
I think at the time I was playing with the grade 4, and to hear other grade 4 bands in Ireland, and be like, oh, these are my peers. It definitely, like, I still love a grade 1 band, of course, but there is something really cool about being like, oh, well, then I say my peers. I feel like British Isles grade 4 maybe is a little different than Western United States grade 4, but still, just being like, oh, these are my people, like. Hey, let's hear how they're doing it. It feels more like a peer-to-peer thing rather than, oh, those are the gods. I'm listening to the gods, but I can never be like the gods,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And there's not really an excuse nowadays. Pretty much everything gets posted online. So, yeah, you can listen to pretty much any band in the world.
I'm imagining, too, like, any band is going to be doing like parades and stuff, and is going to have a little bit of money coming in, and all bands need more money, of course, but it seems to me like it wouldn't be a terrible use of band funds if a pipe major is willing to be the pipe major but can't handle going to get education on their own, to send them, with band funds. Here, we're going to set you up with an instructor for 6 months, or we're going to get you a subscription to Piper's Dojo for 6 months, or something like that, to be like, here you go, pipe major. Let's, as an organization, support the pipe major by saying, here is an opportunity for education that you can then, disseminate to us.
Yeah, if it's a priority to improve as a band and to up your leadership, yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah.
So then you got, we're talking about rehearsals and stuff. We also get some sort of like high intensity moments, be it competition or at performances right before you go on stage or in parades, or sometimes massed bands can actually be I feel like it can be high, kind of like high intensity, partly because you're there with other bands right next to you, and maybe there's a sense of like, maybe we're being judged. Do we look good? Are we presenting ourselves well here among the other bands? How does a pipe major handle intense situations where there might be a trailing drone or an early E? It's not in the rehearsal hall. This is like showtime.
Yeah, I think even in rehearsal hall, like the general attitude and demeanor of the pipe major is so important. Like, it's something that I've learned over and over that every time I get a new lesson on it, it like surprises me, like how I'm feeling is how the band is going to sort of project as well a lot of the times. So yeah, as a pipe major, I think it's important to be confident and calm.
Calm. That seems
And
like a difficult one.
yeah, and excited also, so like, I definitely, my energy and passion for Scottish music gets passed on to my players. And if I'm upset, then that gets passed on as well. So it is important to sort of really regulate your own emotions when you're acting as a pipe major. So yeah, just it's something to keep in mind, and if you're losing your cool right before a contest, almost guaranteed it's not going to be a great one for you. So yeah, just keep your head about you, and manage problems with as much calm as you can. And
So
yeah,
you'd never been one to set up a Gatorade cooler so you could kick it over in fury between like your MSR and your medley or something.
yeah, no. So my partner told me the other day, well, because I broke my solo reed that last week, and I was really upset about it. I was like almost near tears because I loved that reed.
Oh, darn it.
And I was telling her about it, and she pointed out that I only ever really get upset about bagpiping things, right?
Oh, yeah.
So that's kind of a double-edged sword. I'm passionate about it, but especially around my band, I've had to learn how to not get upset about things like that. Or at least, hide it a little bit better,
Have you come away from any experiences, like have you experienced nightmare stories yourself, or have you seen other pipe majors maybe handle some things poorly and gone, oh, I'm not going to be like that?
I mean, breaking reeds is a big deal for me. I've broken a reed at a contest before and gotten really upset, and then I've noticed that like everyone was a little bit sketchy after that, and I could understand. So
Kind of put them on edge.
yeah, it just puts everyone on edge, and they're like, oh no, yeah. Or if like just generally some tuning is going wrong, in the past I've got upset about it, and it just didn't help. So I feel like I've got to a place that even when things aren't going exactly my way, or I can keep my head, and then it works out better.
Yeah. That being said, of course, there's value in being able to get feedback. I mean, I can imagine like if a pipe major sees that something's going wrong, like even if somebody's just playing something wrong. Sorry, I don't know if you can hear my daughter's yelling at me from outside right now.
Oh no.
I'm talking to my friend right now. Oh, is there a cat? Okay, thanks for telling me, Tito. I love you. Well, there's a cat outside.
Oh.
I was just thinking, like, a pipe major doesn't want to not give feedback, right? Because
Yeah.
then there's no improvement. But maybe that intense moment isn't the time for it in some cases, huh? Maybe giving it.
Yeah, or just how you sort of present it is important, right? So like yelling at someone to fix something is generally not good. Especially if you're giving like very specific advice, make sure that it's at least semi-private, and very, very calm and sort of like instructional rather than like chewing them out. Especially if it's public, like you don't want to chew out a player if in front of everyone else. It's just not a good idea.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, for most of us, this is a volunteer hobby thing. Right?
Yeah.
We're not gonna we're gonna end up chasing people away if we treat them poorly, right?
Yeah. When I'm firm, I'm usually generally firm, so the players can feel like it's all spread out. Even if personally they're like that wasn't me.
Yeah.
It sort of gets spread out a little bit, and when I'm firm, it's usually not sort of too intense or sort of derogatory.
Not
It's
usually
more like
pointing right at somebody in the face or something.
yeah. It's more like this keeps happening. I don't want to hear it again. Please fix it. Like
Yeah. Well, what about like what should maybe give me? I'm going to talk to Mark here soon about how to be a good pipe sergeant.
oh, nice.
So as a pipe major, what things make a big difference for you from these support people? Not just the committees that we've talked about, but they're in the circle. You're from your drum sergeant, your pipe sergeant, and from the players in general. What helps you as a pipe major?
Oh, that's a good question. I guess it's gonna depend a lot on personality and individuals. I rely a lot on my pipe sergeant to help me be communicative with my players, especially like just during the week, because like I get distracted during the week, and it's a good idea to remind players of like, hey, rehearsal's coming up, we're gonna work on these things, blah blah blah, or remind people about gigs and stuff like that. I lose track of those things, and so my pipe sergeant helps a lot with that. I rely a lot on my pipe sergeant, and I specifically like to choose pipe sergeants who are going to be extra sort of calm.
Oh, sure, they can kind of help you.
Yeah,
stay
just like sort of a backup, sort of like solid presence that's not going to have any sort of volatility at all. It's just an extra calming factor. My pipe sergeant keeps me on schedule, especially when I'm in like contest mode and I'm tuning, blah blah blah. They tell me basically every 5 minutes, this much longer, we need to move to final tuning. Keep me on track with that kind of a thing. And then the sort of more obvious things. They hear the other side of the circle from me, so like they'll catch things that I don't. And I have my pipe sergeant and another player tune drones. I don't do that anymore, mostly. So they have that responsibility as well. So that's what my pipe sergeant does, and then obviously helps me choose music, stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's useful. For general players, I think it's important to just like work at home, specifically on what your pipe major told you to work on. I actually sort of try to take that to heart, even if you don't feel like it was you causing the issue or doing the thing that they pointed out. Try to work on it.
Absolutely sure.
Yeah, just work on it anyways. Make sure you're super solid, because again, it's sort of a team effort. Everyone should be trying to blend with everyone else, and by reinforcing, even if you're doing it right, reinforcing that, you're going to be another solid point in the circle that's together with everyone else. So
as players, we should all apply the New Testament wisdom of asking, Lord, is it I?
Yeah.
Pipe major, is it I?
Is it I? Yeah. And then as a player to sort of help out your pipe major, I think it's important during rehearsal to, if you have, opinions about what's going on, like don't necessarily uh, feel afraid to bring that up, but maybe don't do it during rehearsal.
Yeah.
Do it after, like
Yes.
you don't need too many chefs saying what's going on and blah
Yeah.
blah blah.
I've definitely been witness to that, especially when a player is like getting extra education, which is good, of course.
Yeah.
But if their private instructor or their online courses have told them something, they're probably excited to share it,
Yeah.
but maybe are sharing it at the wrong time, and sometimes it's contrary to what the pipe major just said, and that sets up a really weird situation to have happening right in front of everybody.
Yeah, yeah. It's not useful in the moment,
Yeah.
And most pipe majors I think would be pretty open to feedback,
Yeah.
like just choose your time and place very carefully.
Yeah. Or
Because
like if a
sometimes
player
it's
has
like,
played with another band, be like, my old pipe major used to say this.
yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, and that also goes into why like I'm not showing up to grade 4 rehearsals and trying to point things out, because it's like, well, am I listening to my pipe major or to you?
Mm.
You know?
I guess
And so same sort of principle applies.
right, like no matter what your pipe major is saying right now, that's what matters, right? That's what you do first. And then
Yeah,
talk
exactly,
about it later.
exactly. Yeah, and if they might even have noticed the issue you brought up, but they're prioritizing something else. Like it could, they have to make those sort of calculations.
Good point.
Or, but maybe they did miss it, which is why it could be nice after rehearsal to be like, "Hey, did you hear this? Oh, no, I didn't. Thanks for bringing it up. Well, listen, maybe we can work on it."
Yeah, I'll listen back to the recording, right? Because it's good to have the recording going.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, like that's important as well. And then like maintaining your instrument is a big deal for a pipe major.
Yeah, please don't
Like
show
we already
up with
said, yeah.
yeah.
Like we already said, that that's important.
Kind of try to remove as many hurdles as you can so that at rehearsal you can get right to rehearsing, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's why like we used to a long time ago call rehearsal practice, and it's not actually practice.
Yeah, Sean Newton has drilled that into our
Yeah.
group when he was our pipe major. He was very clear that practice is what you do on your own. We
Yep.
get together to rehearse.
Yep, exactly. And yeah, it's important to sort of cultivate that at rehearsal as well, that sort of attitude,
Yeah.
like, if you don't have your music learned, then, sit out and learn, be on practice chanter or whatever.
Yeah.
So, little things like that.
Do you ever go deeper than pipe sergeant for in-circle leadership roles? Do you ever have a pipe corporal or assistant to the pipe corporal, or auxiliary pipe sergeant or anything like that, or is it usually just the two?
Geez.
I guess same on drumming. Do you ever set it up so that you have a drum sergeant, but also a drum corporal, or section leads? I guess that kind of stuff. How deep does that leadership go?
I guess it's never like that explicit,
Yeah.
But we have a lot of good players in our band, and I value all their opinions,
Yeah.
So
Of course, sometimes in smaller bands, I have seen, like when I was playing in high school, I remember the size of the group would fluctuate, and it was like sometimes if you had more than two leadership deep, you really are asking who are we leaving out from leadership roles, because there were more leaders than there were non-titled players, and so that could get funny too.
yeah, I think as long as boundaries are pretty clear and explicit, then it can be good. Like I said, I have players help my pipe sergeant tune drones, so they're in charge of that,
Yeah, assignments.
And yeah, I'll ask other players for what they're hearing and stuff like that, because there's a lot of good players. But if everyone's just got their, spoon in the pot, and then it can get really distracting, especially like as you're trying to rehearse and everyone's hearing something, and then rehearsal gets way less efficient. So
Yeah. Well, Ross, I want you to imagine that nobody in your band is going to hear this, so it's totally safe to tell me an honest answer. Is there like, let's say it's like a Mother's Day kind of question. Say we had a Pipe Major's Day, you know, and so
we should have a pipe.
But let's start this. If you could like have a wish list, you know, like what do you want to receive specifically as a pipe major from your band, your boards, your players, you know? And I say Mother's Day because Mother's Day is one of those holidays where you do give your mom a present, but sometimes what you give your mom is like a thank you card or a hug or, you know, an IOU for making her breakfast in bed someday, you know? So it doesn't have to be like, oh, I really want my players to go and buy me an expensive chanter, you know?
Yeah.
That off the table. More like what gift, whether it's a gift of time or a show of appreciation or what has made you feel really good if you have received something from your players? And if not, what do you feel like would really help any pipe major to feel like, you know, I don't know, maybe that they're doing a good job and they should keep doing it and not quit because we need those people to not quit, you know?
For me, I just like having everyone show up so I can play with my friends, you know? Like
Yeah.
that's mostly why I do it. And so, yeah, just coming every week and playing. That's the biggest way to make me happy.
Show up, huh? Be there.
Show up. Yeah. And come with your good energy and have fun with me. Like that's the best way to make me happy, you know.
Mm.
And it's been hard the last 2 years, you know, like we're just starting, you know, hopefully a regular type looking season.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've just missed that over the last couple of years. And then just getting the momentum back this year. And I'm sure lots of bands are going through it. It's just been a little bit difficult, you know. People get out of habits, people forget, you know, like why they do a thing. And so yeah, I just really appreciate when everyone's showing up and having as much fun as I am. I think it's healthy for any human to have a passion and a strong hobby that they dedicate themselves to some high degree. It's really mentally healthy and it's socially healthy as well, especially for pipe bands, you know. It's where I have all my friends. So yeah, like that's the best thing you can do for a pipe major is show up and have fun playing with them. I think.
Yeah, you know, Ross, I think that is our closer.